What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TCG Madness, and now we are going to do the final Yasmir hero. This is Afanas Senka deck review. This is going to be a deck that is going to synergize around playing lots and lots of spells. As you can see already on the screen, I already have the deck ready to go, so if you want to pause it, take a good look at it. Before you do that, if you guys can just do me the really big favor, please hit that like button. If you're new, consider hitting that subscribe button, then pause the screen, go ahead and take a look at the deck, and then if you want, comment down below if you guys think I missed anything. I think this deck is going to be probably, out of all of the Yasmir decks that you can build, I think this one's probably going to be the most powerful. Comment down below if you agree or disagree with that, or if you agree or disagree with anything I did with this deck. Now, of course, as all the other decks, when we do all these deck builds, of course, I'm going to go through all the deck, go through all the cards, why I picked those specific cards. I also did add with this deck to my own little flavor, so there might be some comments saying, hey, this is probably not the most optimal deck. You're probably right. I did something just a little bit different with this deck that I probably wouldn't normally do, but I thought it was pretty good and pretty funny with the synergy with this deck. So we'll take a look at the hero, take a look at the deck itself, go through the deck stats, and then at the very end, I'll show you guys some cards that you probably want to sideboard with this deck, or give you also some other options that maybe you either want to sideboard, or give you guys some options that you maybe, you know what, maybe this card deserves to be in this deck. Again, all things, hopefully you guys will comment down below because I love hearing from you guys. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into this deck, starting with the hero. This is Afanas Senka, of course, a Yasmir hero. This is the last Yasmir hero we'll be going over. It has, of course, pretty traditional. 2 cards for reserve, 2 cards for landmark. Of course, this deck is pretty straightforward. It's going to just resolve all around spells because the hero says when you play a spell, target character you control gain a boost. Pretty straightforward. Play a spell, give a character a boost. The really unique thing about this hero and why I think it's the most powerful is because you're not tapping your hero to give something one boost. That's pretty much all. You can just play as many spells as you can to just give something a boost. And that's really, really powerful in this game of all the TCG. A lot of these cards, a lot of these heroes, excuse me, basically when you do something with a tap your hero, then you get the benefit. So basically you only get that one-time benefit. This one just strictly straightforward just says play a spell, give something a boost. So the way I decided to actually build this deck is obviously we're going to revolve heavy around spells, right? The things that I saw with this deck is heavy on the spells, no permanents because we want just more spells. So again, comment if you think that was right move to do or not. Love to hear from you guys. And then as far as cards go, we want to play cards that have low mana cost for spells and also low mana cost for characters because we really want to use this ability more than once and hopefully on more than one character. So with that being said, let's go ahead and go through the deck that I built, starting with, I think, the most obvious one. This is the rare version of the Studious Disciple. It's a 1/1 for a 0/1/1. When you play this card out of your reserve, the next spell you play this afternoon costs 1 less. Again, pretty straightforward. It also does have this quick action as well. The next spell you play this turn costs 1 less as well. So if you don't want to actually just pay the 1, you could use the quick action to get the same ability. So definitely thought 3 copies of this was warranted. Next up, we have an Adefaction rare. This is Ada Lovelace for a 2/2 for a 1/3/1. When you play this card out of your reserve, you may put a card from your hand in the reserve. If it's a spell card, draw a card. That's another thing I did go with this deck. I have a lot of cards that basically they're going to state drawing something. You know, do this, draw a card, pay this, draw a card. Because another thing that we also, when I was running through this deck, is that when you build this deck, you do have so many spells, so to make sure that when we're dumping a spell, we want to get some really added bonus, and drawing cards with this is really, I think, the way to go. So if you do build this deck, make sure you do a lot of drawing, because you are going to run with heavy spells, so there's a chance that your hand may just be spells, so make sure you put cards that say, hey, play this, draw something. I'll show you exactly what I mean. If you already paused the screen, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Next up is another card that I thought was really good with this deck. This has good synergy. This is red. Another Adefaction rare. A lot of good Adefaction rares with this deck. It's a 2/2 for a 2/2/2 across the board, and it has Season. I keep my boost when I go to reserve. So if you play this card out of your hand for 2, and she gets a boost or 2, that boost stays with her as long as she goes to the reserve. When you play out of your reserve, you get to just do that again. You basically can play something for 2. Like if you get her as a, if you get 2 boosts on this, and it goes to your reserve, she's going to be a 4/4/4 across the board. Paying 2 mana for a 4/4/4 across the board is really good. Unless your opponent has any kind of removal, there's not a whole lot your opponent can do with that. So they may have to pick and choose what they want to remove. Again, great card. And then if you get out with more 4s across the board, if you play another spell, you can get to 5/5. A lot of good things you can do with this deck. Because again, our hero just says play a spell, give something a boost. So Season goes very, very well. Next up, this is where I added my little bit of spice to this deck. I put Sneasel Shroom into this deck, and hear me out on why. It's a 2/2 for Sneasel Shroom for 1/1. I just put it in here because it has Anchored. If you're giving something boost, it would be very beneficial to you if it sticks around the board for one more turn. Just like with Red. Red has Season, so it's like almost like pseudo Anchor that at least keeps all those boosts, but it still does go to the reserve. Having something that's boosted and has Anchored means that you're going to stick around. And here's the thing too, when you're playing all these spells, the amount of characters you're going to play maybe is like 1 or 2. You guys have noticed I have a lot of low-cost characters and some low-cost spells. And those are the spells: play low-cost characters, play low-cost spells. If you have 4 or 5 mana, you should be able to get a character or 2 and a spell or 2 out there with it. If you have big body cost spells and characters, chances are you're going to play 1 character, maybe a spell, and that's it. So I wanted something that was going to stick around the board. I thought Sneasel Shroom was a really good fit for this deck, but you guys can let me know whether or not you agree or disagree. 3 copies of Sneasel Shroom. Next up is a rare version of the Tooth Fairy. It's a 2/2, 1 across the board. It has Sabotage when you play it out of your hand. I really like Sabotage in this deck, especially with another spell that we will play that I'll talk about. It's a good 1/2 punch that you can do with this deck. So I thought 3 copies of Tooth Fairy was a good way to go. Next up, we have 3 copies of a 2/1 Katagrin Mage Dancer. It's a 1/1 across the board. Pretty straightforward. When you play a spell, I gain a boost. Love it. Love it, love it. For a 2/1, so you play at your hand for just 2 mana, play a couple spells, you're going to boost this character up. The only thing that would make this thing really OP is if maybe you had a unique version of this card that actually had Seasoned on it. If this thing had Seasoned, oh man, you can definitely do a lot of damage with this character. Next up, we also have 3 copies of Baba Yaga, 3/2, 2/1/2. Draw a card when you play it out of your hand. I like it because I just like drawing cards. And then the big body win condition that I put in this is Sakurabru. This is a 7/4, 4 across the board. Your opponent's expedition facing me moves backwards 1 region. A really powerful card. Again, you have to make sure you play this out of your hand. The reserve is not going to get this ability. It's only out of your hand. So those are all the characters. We went with 24 characters and 16 spells. The spells that I went with this deck, and you guys can let me know too if you think this is a good balance, 24 to 16, or do you guys actually think I should put more spells in this deck? Guys, comment down below. Really would appreciate that. For the spells, I have a rare version of a 1/2 magical training. It's pretty much straightforward, just draw a card. Again, if you're going to have a lot of handful spells, let's make sure when we dump a spell, we're going to get a boost, and then also we're going to replace that card that we're dumping. And this card does not have bleeding, so you actually are going to get that, play it right out of your reserve for 2 to draw another card. Pretty good. Of course, we have to have some removal, so we went with Off You Go, the regular version. It's a 2/4, send to reserve, target character with a hand cost of 3 or less. Again, Off You Go pairs very well with the Tooth Fairy. So again, play maybe Off You Go, then play Tooth Fairy, then maybe boost your Tooth Fairy, maybe boost something else that's on the board. So really good combo. Another good combo piece is Spycraft, Sabotage, then Resupply. So again, really good ways to just absolutely just remove things from your opponent's side of the board, whether it's on the field or whether it's on the reserve. And we have that resupply ability too. So again, with all of that, you're gonna sabotage, resupply, and then you're gonna boost something from your hero. So there's a lot of value you can get with Spycraft. Definitely think 3 copies is the way to go. Also, we have 2 copies of a 3/5 Conjuring Seal. Play it, draw 2 cards. Again, pretty straightforward. If we're going to dump something, if you have a handful of spells, I like the idea of dumping a spell, getting a boost, and then replacing all those cards. So I went with a lot of draw engines. Also, 3 copies of Banishing Gate. It's a 4/4, discard target character or permanent. Pretty straightforward, a little more pseudo removal. And then, of course, Kraken's Wrath, when if you face off against anybody who plays Ordris, you really need this card, or even Axiom, you really do need this card just because board is going to get flooded with a bunch of those 1/1 or 2/2 tokens. It's also just a good card because Kraken's Wrath is sent to reserve up to 3 target characters with a total hand cost of 5 or less. So it's good to get rid of all those pesky removals. Also, maybe if your opponent plays a lot of low-level spells, it's also good to just get rid of all of that. That is the deck itself. Let's go ahead and take a look at the stats again. If you guys think this is a good deck, please comment down below, or if you think I missed something. I went with no permanents. There are for the sideboard. I do have some permanents that you could obviously put in this deck. Of course, you'll see not legal. It's just not legal because I don't own the cards or Global Vitality. Everything else is pretty legal in standards with Altered TCG. For the stats, it's a pretty good split right here of heavies on the 2s and decent on the 1s and 3s. We have a couple of 5s and 7s in there. And then for the reserve cost, again, heavies on the 1s and 2s and only on the 4s and 5s. And that's pretty much those spells that are going to get dumped in one character. For attributes, 36 force, 42 mountain, 39 ocean. Pretty low stats. What you're banking on, though, for the stats, though, is boosting up these characters as fast as possible and really outgaining your opponent. Type of spells, 16 to 24. Again, 0 cards of ownership because I'm just too lazy to do stuff. So that's the deck, and those are the stats itself. Comment down below. Good deck, bad deck, average deck, and again, what would you guys do a little bit differently? Now, let's go ahead and shift our focus to the sideboard. Let me go ahead and show you guys what cards that either you would sideboard, or maybe some cards that maybe if you want to take out something, maybe add these cards in as well. Maybe this will give it a more powerful punch. For the cards that we have sideboarded, I have, again, Add a faction rare, Bravo's Blade Dancer, 1/2. It's again season end, gains a boost when you play it out of your reserve. Let me know too if you guys think this would be a better alternative than red. I went with red just because it's a little more powerful, but Bravo's Blade Dancer has the better potential because it's A, cost less efficient, and again, it does have that one boost initially. So play it for 1 mana, you're going to get a boost. It's going to be 1 across the board. You play a bunch of spells, this thing can definitely get out of control. Or let me know if you guys think that obviously Bravo's Blade Dancer deserves to be in the deck with red, in combo with red, because that can be a good 1-2 punch as well. Also too, I went with the rare Tooth Fairy. I think this card might be better than the alternative. Again, you guys can let me know. It's cheaper with the mana reduction or reserve reduction right there. So maybe a rare version of the Tooth Fairy would be better. This card too also was like, I kind of went back and forth. I definitely think this card should be sideboarded. It's the Alchemist. 3/1/1s across the board. When you play it out of your hand, it gains 3 boosts. So for 3 mana, it's going to be 4 across the board. Play a couple, maybe a spell or two. This thing can definitely be out of control, and it could be very powerful very quickly. If you play it for the 1 mana in your reserve, maybe you get a couple spells, you boost it. Maybe. You guys can let me know. I think definitely it's a good card to sideboard. I don't think it deserves to be in the main deck. I do think there's a good argument to be made that Bravo's Blade Dancer deserves to be in the main deck. And then also too, I went with Dorothy Gale. Definitely needs to be sideboard as well for that added removal. Even the regular version would be pretty good. I just didn't know if I should put it in the main deck, because then I thought maybe I'd have 2 heavies on the 5s and 7s. I really just wanted one big body spell, one big body character, and I wanted to make sure my character cost was as low as possible. I thought putting the regular Dorothy Gale might make it just a little too costly, a little more cost expensive for my mana. So I went with definitely putting it in the sideboard. For the spells, I only went with 1 spell that I do think you should definitely sideboard or take into consideration putting into your main deck. It's another Add a Faction rare. It's Helping Hand. For a 1/2, target character gains a boost and loses fleeting. That could be very good with all your seasoned characters as well. Also too, it's Sneezer Shroom. Just didn't know what to remove as far as spells. Maybe Magical Training maybe gets taken out, and maybe you go with the rare version of Helping Hand. Definitely do think there's an argument to be made that this should be in the main deck. And then, of course, I also threw in some permanents. I do think there could be an argument to be made, not for the main deck, but definitely for the sideboard. You guys can let me know. I went with 3 copies of Aether Shard, 5/5, draw a card at noon, draw another card. Even the regular version might be up for consideration as well. And then the other one was the Kajagir Yasmir Bastion. The reason why, though, I did not put this in the main deck at all is because it's an 8/8. If this was maybe like a 6/6 or even like a 7/7, I can definitely see a strong argument to be made that this should definitely go in the main deck. It pretty much says tap it, the next spell you play this turn is free, and if you play it from your hand, it loses fleeting. We have a couple of cards that have fleeting, not a whole lot, so, you know, maybe, but for 8/8, man, I think that's way too expensive. I can't imagine you getting to that point in the game and, you know, being able to play this. Now, maybe if down the road, if Yasmir has some, like, decent ramp cards, then I can see an argument to be made. I just think for 8/8, it's way too expensive, so I do think sideboarding it maybe. So maybe if you go up against a deck that does take a long turn to develop, I don't know how many of those decks right now in Ultra TCG there are, but if you were going up against a ramp deck, there's no way you can make the argument. If you go against a moderately low cost mana deck, there's no way that an argument can be made, because you're just going to get outgained too quickly. By the time you get to 8 mana and you just play this out of your hand, well, you're pretty much giving up on that turn, right? If you have 8 mana and you play this, that's pretty much your entire turn right there. Nothing you can do. Maybe you play a spell for free. Maybe you play Off You Go and you know, help yourself out a little bit. Maybe that's where Sneezer Shroom comes in. Again, there can be an argument. It's just I don't see in what current state of the meta for Ultra TCG is. Just don't think this card needs to be in the main deck. But again, you guys comment down below. If this was like a 7/7 or a 6/6, yeah, I probably would put this in the deck. 8/8, I think it's a little too expensive. I don't think it deserves to be in the main deck, but you guys can comment down below. That's going to do it for this video. That's the entire deck, including the sideboard with the stats and all of that. That is going to wrap up Yasmir. The next set of heroes that we are going to be taking a look at will be Lyra. I'm very excited to get into some of those because those are pretty much your high gamble decks. That's going to be really fun to build. But again, let me know what you guys think about this deck. Hope you guys have enjoyed it as always. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you guys next time.